Hello, everyone, and welcome to TBR's Future Friday, TBR 2015 Predictions, a series of thought leadership webinars being held each Friday between January 16th and February 13th, 2015. Each Friday, TBR's research teams will share predictions for 2015 and beyond across the hardware, software, cloud, security, devices, professional services, telecom, and digital markets. Top TBR analysts will address the trends, drivers, and the business outcomes they predict will occur throughout the year. The Future Friday webinar series stakes out the status, changes, and the key market developments that will occur. Before we start, there's a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. First, we will be recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube site, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit our channel and watch this presentation or any of the others we've posted. Second, we'd like to hear your opinions and thoughts on the material we're presenting. Please send any questions or comments through the Q&A or chat function. The presenters will address them at the end of the session. Or if you'd like to set up a client inquiry for more detailed discussion, please reach out directly at the end of the webinar to set up the call. Third, we will send out the slides to everyone registered for today's webcast within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. You can also find the slides as well as our thought leadership pieces, other webinars, and commentaries on our SlideShare site. I will post the URL for that in the chat function. I'm Stuart Williams, the Vice President of Research and your moderator today. Today's presentation is being led by Jane Wright, TBR's Senior Analyst and Engagement Manager for our Enterprise Security Practice. And we're joined by a guest speaker, Matt Healy, who's a Principal Analyst in our Enterprise Software segment. In the Future Fridays webinar series, TBR research teams provide business analysis on established trends that will continue in 2015, new trends for 2015, and long-term predictions for the field. 2015 will be a year of retrenchment and renewal as customers and vendors reinforce established security strategies and take discriminating steps towards future security developments around advanced technologies such as forensics and analytics. Even as security vendors scramble to deliver cutting-edge solutions that address growing security expectations, customers will continue to purchase many of the legacy security products, such as malware prevention products and services such as compliance tracking services that evolved over the past 5 to 10 years. At the same time, weighty M&A activity will be replaced by more fluid partnerships between IT and security vendors. Initiatives that will one day expand use cases for security, such as Internet of Things, are just getting off the ground in 2015. Considering this, TBR developed predictions for 2015 and beyond. The three types of trends are trends that will continue into 2015. These are current trends TBR expects will continue or accelerate in the coming year. New trends for 2015. These are maturing trends from 2014 that TBR believes will expand in the current year. And longer-term trends. These trends are opportunities that TBR believes will begin this year but will not have a full effect on the industry for several years. Now that I've set the stage, let me hand the call off to Jane.
Thank you, Stuart, and hello, everybody. Let's dive right into our first trend. This is the trend that we've been seeing in the past few years in the enterprise security market, and TBR believes will continue and accelerate in 2015. And this is the trend in spending on preventative security solutions. Here at TBR, we slice the enterprise security market in many ways, and one of the ways we do that is by dividing products and services between prevention-oriented needs and protection or detection and response requirements. So in the prevention slice of the market, we place products and services that are designed primarily to block known and commodity malware and typically serve as the first line of defense for many organizations. These would be things like traditional firewalls and IPS and antivirus and traditional SIEMs. On the detection and response or protection side of the market, we place more advanced technologies that are used to detect zero-day threats or targeted malware or persistent threats that have entered an infrastructure, bypassing that preventive wall, and now are in and need to be detected, prioritized, and dealt with. So we went out and we asked customers where they're planning to spend their threat management budgets in 2015. And what really surprised us is that they told us they're going to increase their spending around those preventative solutions even faster than they're going to increase their spending in the more advanced detection and response solutions. Now, this was kind of surprising because when you listen to all the customer conversation and you look at all the evaluations going on, and also knowing about all the investments that you folks, you security vendors are doing for detection and response advanced technologies, one would have thought that customers were planning to ramp up their spending on detection and response for advanced threats. But our research showed us that that is not the case. They're going to spend money faster on prevention in 2015. Now, the good news is this is not going to come at the expense of something else. So customers' security budgets, as has been in the past few years, they are again growing. And most of those net new dollars, though, will go to preventive products and managed and hosted services. And I show you here on this slide some of the reasons. Primarily, this is just because the economy is improving, especially in North America, where companies are expanding their infrastructures because they're hiring more people and they're rolling out more applications for more business processes, and they are adding endpoints, growing their networks and servers, and they basically just are wrapping preventive security around it. They don't dare stop using the preventive security tools, processes, and services that they've used in the past. Now, this change is not going to happen consistently across all customer sizes. We're mostly going to see that growth in small businesses. That is, customers with 250 to 1,000 employees, as you see here on slide 6. What this slide is showing you is what the growth rate will be in increase in preventive solution spending in 2015. And so you see that small businesses are really planning to ramp it up in 2015. So what does this mean to you as a security vendor? Well, you're going to see an increase in revenue opportunities for preventative solution spending. But more importantly, that larger volume is going to come from more smaller deals. You need to prepare for this volume of smaller deals that will be presented to you, opportunities that will be presented to you, by looking at what you learned from best practices that worked well selling to larger enterprises, and thinking again about how you can repackage them for smaller customers, and maybe offering different price points for different size customers, small and mid-sized customers. And of course, you'll probably want to be managing a lot of those deals through your channel partners, and so you'll want to look to see if you need to reinforce your channel sales resources in certain areas in order to address these increases from small and medium-sized businesses wanting to spend more on preventative products and services. Now let's move on to the second of my 3 trends for you today, and this is the new trend, something different happening in 2015 that we haven't seen in a while in the enterprise security market. What we have seen in the past few years have been a lot of big acquisitions. Here on slide 8, I show you some of them. I'm sure you're all familiar, but starting with Intel's acquisition of McAfee. Well, we'd even go back further, EMC acquiring RSA, but throughout these years we've seen IBM acquire Q1, Dell acquiring SonicWall, etc. So there's been a lot of big acquisitions, and I believe these are going to stop in 2015. We are not going to see these types of acquisitions happen in 2015. And by these type, I mean primarily multi-line IT vendors adding a security business into their fold to the tune of $1 billion or more in deal size. Of course, we will see tuck-in and niche acquisitions where appropriate, but nothing of this scope and nature will happen in 2015. And why is this? Why the sudden stop? The signpost for it came to us with Symantec's announcement late last year that they're planning to split their security and information management businesses apart into 2 companies. What happened with Symantec is what I'm seeing happening to a lot of companies that are running a security business alongside other IT businesses under one umbrella. It is very difficult to drive synergies from a security business alongside other IT businesses, at least drive the expected synergies that would have been expected at the time of the acquisition. That's because security is such a different market from all other IT segments. It has very different drivers. It is a fear-driven, war-like environment, cyber war. And decision makers are different too. And so this means that vendors need to execute very different strategies to address this market. So instead of major acquisitions, nothing will of course stay the same. What will we see instead? In 2015, what we're going to see are different and more technology alliances. Technology alliances are going to become much more valuable in the enterprise security market. They are going to become worth gold to the member vendors. Now, I'm not talking about your we tested it together, we both confirm it works with each other kind of technology alliance. I mean stronger technology alliances that either A, are federated in nature, meaning that the member vendors are truly sharing some resources, such as sales and marketing, but also each focusing on their own niche areas of specialty in their products development. And so, and also a federated model where, I already said that, I'm sorry. And so what I think we're going to see will be particularly endpoint vendors, endpoint security vendors, looking to form these tight alliances with network security and network equipment vendors. Because as customers are expanding their spending on endpoint security, especially threat protection and response on the endpoint, they need to be tightly allied with network vendors so that they can provide a holistic view of that infection to their customers. So we might see vendors such as Symantec and Intel with McAfee and maybe Kaspersky on the endpoint security side, who specialize there, looking to partner in a strong technology alliance with network vendors such as Cisco or network security vendors such as Palo Alto Networks. As a security vendor, you'll want to look to form those federated types of technology alliances, and technology alliances that go beyond integration and maybe forming even some sort of exclusivity amongst the members. And look to partner with those widely deployed data center and networking and infrastructure management, information management vendors. Finally, a longer-term trend to share with you today. You know, we hear a lot about security around the Internet of Things. And yes, customers are starting to deploy Internet of Things types of projects and applications. And these are putting sensors on various devices and equipment and collecting data for use in business cases. But what we see is that Internet of Things projects and applications are still very much in the early stages. And so when I talk to customers and ask them, what are you doing about security for your Internet of Things? They're telling me two things. Either they're saying, A, security is just not that big a priority because the data we're collecting is not that sensitive. Or B, well, we're kind of setting security aside right now and just keeping our data local, keeping our projects very restricted so that we don't have to worry as much about security. And so security is taking a bit of a back seat to other concerns such as development and meeting deadlines. That means that security is not going to be, that Internet of Things is not going to be a key driver for security revenue in 2015. However, 2017, fast forward 2 years, and we're going to see a different story. By 2017, we believe that customers will have come a lot further in establishing their Internet of Things applications, starting to derive real value of it from them, and they're going to expand the scope and volume and begin to invest more heavily in security to protect those Internet of Things databases and use cases. So this means that you have a 2-year window of opportunity that you can use now to develop your IP and your solutions for security around Internet of Things applications. You can begin forming those partnerships now that will be worth so much to you, partnerships with IoT and sensor and device manufacturers. And although there's not much market share yet to worry about, you can begin developing mind share. This could be by developing case studies and writing best practices, positioning yourself as an expert in security of IoT. And finally, we suggest planning for a consulting-led approach to drive that you will use for your IoT security engagement since 2017. We believe customers are not just going to be looking for off-the-shelf, quick plug-in security controls for their IoT applications. Instead, they're going to look for consulting services to help them plan and deploy security that is specifically attuned to Internet of Things. So you'll want to plan to prepare your professional services organization to offer those services to customers along with your other products. Those were my 3 trends for today. And now I'd like to open this up to any questions you may have.
Great, Jane. Thank you very much. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. The first question is about small businesses. So you showed a chart that had some different segments and different spending. I don't know if you could go back to that and give a little bit of a discussion on it. The question here is, why are small businesses increasing their security spending more than large businesses? Yeah, this is the chart right here.
It's really got to do with where the economy is recovering right now. If you look at the economy, especially in North America, where we conducted most of our research, the recovery began to happen first in the larger organizations, especially those that receive some government subsidies. And just now, according to a number of sources like the Harvard Business Review, the economy is beginning to pick up for small businesses too in 2015. They're beginning to hire more headcount and expand their assets at this time. And so they will be increasing their spending to protect those assets with the preventative security controls.
I'd also like to have our principal analyst, Matt Healy, weigh in on this question as well, because Matt tracks a lot of the enterprise software, analytics, and professional services activity, so he's got a good perspective on this.
Excellent. Thank you, Stuart. And so what I see when I look through a chart like this and I look through what's going on in the macroeconomy, we clearly did have somewhat of a bit of a stumble, let's call it, in 2008 or 2009. And the recovery took a while to really start being fleshed out, and it did start hitting the large enterprises first. And as with security spending, what Jane said is entirely spot on correct. Security is a fundamentally different market. It's driven by fear. But the other thing that happens is it's also one of the things that you can delay the spending on when you're in financial trouble, because I'd rather, if I'm in financial problems and the world isn't recovering, I'm going to throw money at cost reduction and revenue generation rather than security, because those see an immediate impact in the bottom line. And so now that we're beginning to see the SMB recover, the economy recover in the SMB world, they're beginning to be on more stable ground and more stable footing, and that discretionary, even though it's not discretionary kind of spending, is returning, and they realize how far they've gotten behind because they've been focused on revenue growth and cost cutting because the economy hasn't really come to them at this point in time. And so now we're really beginning to see them say, yeah, you know, I really am behind, and I mean, I know I'm not as big as Sony or Target or Home Depot, but man, they got hacked and that was bad. So maybe the security stuff we're actually going to have to start catching up on, because we now have the money to do it and we've delayed it as long as we can. We really got to go at this point.
Okay. Jane, any other responsive points on that question?
That was excellent.
Great. So let's, here's another question. regards Symantec, and since Symantec split up its business, do you believe that EMC will split up RSA? It seems like there's some twinning going on here.
Yeah, very similar. You know, if you look at EMC and RSA, they do have very similar business segments as Symantec did when it still had its two businesses under one umbrella. Now, whether or not EMC will spin off RSA is one thing, and that's unknown, but I can tell you this. I think for RSA's sake, it would be a good thing if that happened. And here's why. I think that RSA has some excellent technologies, especially around security analytics and things like Archer and ECAT, very strong technologies, similar to the strengths and technologies that we see at vendors such as IBM. And yet RSA's revenue is very low compared to its security peers. And it's also very low within EMC. It's only about 4 or 5% of EMC's revenue. So you've got these great technologies, and yet the revenue is just not driving the revenue. At the same time, RSA does a very good job, though, of driving the revenue that it gets from its resources. So one of the things that we do in our security benchmark is we measure enterprise security revenue dollar earned for every enterprise security employee. And RSA does a good job in this area, as good as, say, IBM. So what's happening here? I think that to some extent, RSA's strengths are a little bit dimmed under the EMC umbrella. And if RSA was outside of that and able to approach a wider customer population, and draw a bit more attention to its fantastic products, then I think we could see RSA grow in revenue faster than it has before.
Jane, thank you very much. So here's our last question that's come in. How influential will reputation risk be in security spending?
Very, very important. One of the questions we ask people in our research is, what is driving your increase in security budget and decisions around security budget, where you're going to spend your dollars in 2015? And more than ever before, the first and second responses I hear are all around protecting our reputation. Our board is worried. We don't want to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal for having a breach. We don't want to have to notify customers. And so fear of reputation damage is driving security spending greatly in 2015.
And so I just want to add into that just a little bit, because as part of my role here, I also look at some of our vertical industries, and what I've seen across the board when I look at various verticals, when it comes to topics like reputation risk, the more public-facing your brand is, the more you're concerned about reputation risk. So Nike is more concerned about reputation risk than Halliburton is, because Nike is out there for everybody to see, and we all know, and we're as a consumer brand, and everybody understands Nike. Halliburton, a lot of people probably know because of the former administration, but some of these more business-to-business type that don't have as much of a consumer-facing organization are a little less concerned about it. They are absolutely not ignoring it. The question is whether or not it's 10 out of 10 or 8 out of 10. And the more public-facing you are, the more you're going to be closer to be 10 out of 10 in terms of concerns rather than a 7 or an 8 out of 10. So when you start as a security vendor, when you start going to some of these organizations, really start thinking about what their reputation risk is. And you're right, Jake. No one wants the pixelated picture of their CEO on that Wall Street Journal next to massive security breach as the headline. Nobody wants that. Some people don't want it more than other people don't want it.
That's great, and I'll add to that too, Matt, because I'll align that with another question that's come in. Someone asked about how spending will occur across different industries. And what we saw also aligns with exactly what Matt was talking about. It's those industries that have a high breach notification reporting requirement that are going to be spending more. in 2015. So we saw, for example, that as before, spending increases will come especially high in healthcare and finance. And part of that is fear of reputation loss or damage, but also because of the breach notification laws that force them to notify everyone when something has gone wrong. So that's where we're going to see the increase in spending in certain industries in 2015.
So I'd like to take another question here. And this just pivots into looking ahead. Which vendors currently have the most market share for the Internet of Things security? So it seems to me like that's a very nascent area, loosely defined. So where are we at? What's the story?
I would say right now, Cisco has done a terrific job of establishing mind share, if not market share, for Internet of Things security. There really isn't a market just yet for Internet of Things security, so talking about market share and how we divide that up would be a little bit fluid right now, but certainly Cisco has gotten right out in front of the crowd to establish itself as an expert in Internet of Things security. Now, when you align that with Cisco's huge install base of network equipment customers, and you put those two together, you just got to say that Cisco and the Internet of Things security market is Cisco's to win in 2017 if they continue to execute the way they have been. But of course, a lot can change in 2 years, so time will tell. But another thing is to keep in mind that the real winners in Internet of Things security are going to be the service providers, both managed security service providers and professional services consultants. Managed security service providers, because Internet of Things is going to be such a volume play. Who's going to monitor all those sensors and devices? A lot of enterprises, once they get it up to production and into scale, they're going to hand that off and outsource it to a managed security provider. And then professional services, because as we indicated, customers are going to want consulting support as they roll out Internet of Things. They're going to want consulting support for security. And so professional services firms will also capture revenue around Internet of Things security.
Yeah, so what's interesting and where we are, and the market share question I think is a little bit premature. If anyone on the phone watches the Masters and you start talking, listening to the interviews of the golfers, they always talk about Friday on the Masters as the day you get into position to get into position on Saturday. And so I think where we are on Internet of Things security right now is vendors are getting into position so they can get into position as this really happens. You're seeing some R&D, capturing of mind share, setting up for what this is going to be. There isn't really any market share here yet. There's not a lot of money here yet, but there's going to be a lot. So I want to make sure that I am in the best, I'm able to get into the best position I possibly can when this starts. And so I know that sounds a little weird, getting in a position to get into position, but once you've had, Phil Mickelson explain it to you after Friday on the Masters, you get it. And that's really where I'm going to end this one.
Yeah, this is Stuart. I just want to add one more thought there. Jane, you called out Cisco and network. I would imply that network security is the locus of control from your point of view with the Internet of Things. I would come back and say that the application layer is incredibly important. You may have multiple applications accessing the same sensors, and designing, developing, writing, testing applications that can access, manage, and securely allow access based on roles and functions to that data is just as important as securing the flow of that data in the first place. So there are multiple areas of ingress into the IoT security market. So I would say network security, and then AppSec is certainly a ripe area and one that has many more different point areas for securitization. So if there aren't any more comments or questions, I want to thank everybody for participating in the webinar today. Jane, thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. You can follow Jane on Twitter. Here's her handle. Please check out the content that she publishes and She'll be doing more webinars on our growing security service this year. If you have any feedback for Jane, please go ahead and email her. Before you sign off, I'd like to ask you to complete a brief survey about the webinar. As we do our research into the markets, we also want to do research into how our customers perceive and consume our research. So please take that survey, and we'd really appreciate that. We'll leave the chat function open for another couple of minutes to give folks a chance to ask any last-minute questions. And thank you again for attending. There will be another 2 Future Fridays webinars next week, and those invitations should be out. Thank you very much, and have a great weekend.